Hey y'all, it's the Anthony Fantano of Anime here, back with another subpar anime review for both yours and my own displeasure. Objection! Now, it is embedded in our human nature to disagree. We disagree with religion, science, politics, who has the better pizza, who's the better music artist, who makes the best clothes, who's the better waifu, which sports team is the best. It's always gonna be the Bills. But if there's one thing I think all humans can come together and universally agree on, it's that kaijus are the coolest fucking thing in the world. Objection! I love kaijus. I love Godzilla. I love Mothra. I love King Kong, if that even counts as a kaiju. I love anything with big giant aliens or monsters terrorizing cities. It's why I really enjoy Evangelion and mech shows, because they're usually fighting giant monsters in giant robots, so this type of thing is always up my alley. With my love for giant robots, giant aliens, and giant monsters, it's a shame that after hearing about this manga called Kaiju number 8 2 years ago, I was a lazy sack of shit and decided not to read it. And it's because I didn't read it that I got lucky enough to find out that there's an anime adaptation and it just recently came out, so guess who gave that a try? Kaiju number 8's anime is produced by Production IG and Studio Kara. Studio Kara specifically was founded by Hideaki Anno, who created Neon Genesis Evangelion, and built this studio to produce the Evangelion Rebuild films. And if you know anything about me, it's that I love Evangelion and worship the ground Anno stands on, so of course this was going to be a show I ended up watching at some point. At the time of this recording, the show is only about 3 episodes in, so unfortunately I won't be going into detail of the other episodes, so this will be more of a first impressions than a full-on review, much like many of my other seasonal anime reviews. Before we continue the video, I'd like to remind you guys to join the Discord and shoot the shit about anime or video games, and follow me on all my socials, which will be linked down below. Of course, remember to like the video, comment down below what you think of Kaiju number 8, or harass me to review a show of your liking, and subscribe for more content. Now on to the giant fucking Kaiju anime. Jesus, I love this shit. Kaiju number 8 takes place in Japan. Oh, what do you know, an anime taking place in Japan. In this version of Japan, however, they are constantly getting attacked by these monsters known as kaijus. They are just these huge, monstrosity, demon-looking things that just terrorize the town. Tasked with killing these monsters, the Japanese Defense Force is a bunch of people trained to basically just get rid of kaijus. They're super strong, super fast, and basically like a military force. After watching their town get completely destroyed by kaiju as kids, childhood friends Kafka and Mina both vow to become members of the Defense Force and wipe out all kaijus in existence. Mina has become the famous commander of the Defense Force's 3rd unit, so she's super famous and recognizable. However, Kafka is not that lucky. Unfortunately, he never made it into the Defense Force. After failing the exam numerous times, he ends up getting subjected to being part of the cleanup crew, which has to clean up all the dead carcasses of kaijus after giant battles, which doesn't sound fun. You end up smelling like piss and shit for pretty much the rest of your life. I like to liken that group to like the damage control group from the Avengers movies. They tend to have to clean up after every single Avengers battle, so it's like picking up all the pieces and putting things back together, except this is way worse because it's just dead monsters that smell like ass. After making the incredibly smart decision of deciding to fight one of these kaijus and not be a bitch anymore, he gets, of course, shockingly, his ass completely handed to and gets put into the hospital, getting saved by, of course, Mina herself with just a fat flying headshot. Oh my god, she's so cool. And while sitting in the hospital trying to recover from his grave wounds because he got his ass whooped, a monster decides to fly into his body and turn him into a kaiju himself. Now, Kafka gets to keep his consciousness, so unfortunately, he doesn't just become a full-blown monster, but the Defense Force doesn't see it that way, so they're like, oh, dude, it's a whole new monster. We gotta go kill this guy. And so, Kafka has to go and escape. And with this new kaiju form, he has superhuman strength, speed, and agility, and is able to escape the Defense Force. He becomes the first kaiju to ever escape the Defense Force and has become dubbed as Kaiju number 8. Oh look, they said the thing. You know, the title of the anime. That's original. And with his newfound resolve, our main character decides he finally wants to join the Defense Force and fight along Mina's side, while also keeping his new abilities a secret from the Defense Force itself and obviously the general public because they're probably going to kill him. Keep in mind, Kafka can jump in between forms. He could transform into the kaiju or he could be a human, so it shouldn't be that difficult for him to keep it a secret, but this is anime, so obviously it's going to be difficult. And that's pretty much the basic gist of Kaiju number 8 so far. It's only got a couple of episodes out, so there's not too much going on. Obviously the manga has been around for a long time, but this is all I got to see, and I really enjoyed this show. I think this is a really cool premise, and I like things like that where you get new powers and you got to keep them away from people. Maybe it's because I read too many comic books. This show has really good pacing. I like how fast it goes. I like how quick it is. It seems like it gets to the point, but it's also pretty quiet, so it's not like it's lightning fast. It's not like boom like Solo Leveling or anything. It likes to take its time in certain areas. Some episodes feel a little bit slower than others, but when it gets going, it gets going. I really like how quick quickly the action moves. It's fast-paced, it's fun, there's a lot of oomph, there's a lot of punch, and I think that type of stuff is really nice. This show also reminds me a lot of series like Gantz and All You Need Is Kill as far as the overall aesthetic. I really enjoy the character designs here. It reminds me a lot of Studio Gainax, Studio Bones, and Studio Trigger when they're really at their best, and you know that I stan those studios. I'm an Evangelion fan. Of course I love that type of stuff. I really love how grotesque and violent this show can be, while also genuinely being one of the funniest shows I've seen in a long time. Anime doesn't usually make me laugh while also being grotesque and crazy violent, but this is one of those shows that really does it for me. Like when Kafka first turns into a kaiju and he's like, oh my god, I gotta pee, and then he like pisses out of his nipples. Like I'm a child. I find that very funny, and I chuckled a lot. Also, the dynamic between him and his kohai is just extremely funny, especially when he turns into a kaiju, because they're just trying to figure out how to work this thing, and he's like, dude, it's totally me, and the dude's like, maybe it's you? I'm pretty sure it's you. I mean, nobody could be this dumb. It's just so good. I think that they have a really great character dynamic, and that was extremely refreshing considering how like serious the show is when it comes to fighting giant monsters and people actually dying and stuff like that. That's not to say this show doesn't get serious and quiet, because it also delves into more sweet, quiet scenes, like that flashback of Mina and Kafka swearing to join the defense force, or when Kafka saves that little girl and her mother from the giant kaiju, and the little girl is trying to tell Mina not to kill the good kaiju, just kill the bad ones, because Kafka was, you know, he was a pretty good guy, he was a sweet guy. I mean, look at this scene, it's so good, oh my god, I'm crying. Animation here is super clean, it's super crisp. I really love the clean use of traditional animation along with the CGI animation. Usually CGI animation doesn't look that good, but it looked pretty damn good here. I couldn't really tell, and when it did, it looked really, really good in motion, as well as the colors and lighting. They also look really nice. Everything seems to complement itself very well, especially with the really cool character designs that remind me a lot of like Studio Gainax and Studio Bones when they were really good. So this show already just super appealing on the eyes. It's one of my favorite looking shows. I just love that type of art style, and Production IG and Studio Kara nailed it. Speaking of animation, the opening for this show is absolutely insane. It is such an artistic take. It reminds me a lot of like Making of a Cyborg from like the original Ghost in the Shell movie, but it also reminds me of the opening to Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex with its use of CG animation and just really weird artistic takes. I can tell easily that Production IG made this intro themselves, not just because they clearly made the Ghost in the Shell scenes that I just mentioned, but for the sheer fact that I've seen the Evangelion rebuilds, and the CG in those movies is awful. I mean, seriously, what in the bluest of blue hells is this stuff, man? Who said this was okay for the public? These things haunt my dreams. I wake up in a cold sweat. Without a doubt, this is one of the best anime openings I've ever seen, and immediately went into my favorites. Also, the song kind of reminds me of the opening to Arcane, and while I'm not a fan of Imagine Dragons, I can admit that the song kind of slaps, and so does this one. Side note, the ending is also such a summer song, and I can't get enough of it, man. It's like if Shawn Mendes was actually, you know, good. Fuck Shawn Mendes. One Republic did this? What timeline am I in? The soundtrack overall is also pretty damn good. I mentioned in the solo leveling video how I didn't find much of the OST to really stand out. However, with Kaiju number 8, the music is one of the main things that got my attention. In the literal first episode, I heard tracks that sounded like they were pulled straight from Fooly Cooly, and anytime anything reminds me of the Pillows, I get really excited and smile. Funky bass lines and fuzzy guitar tone really gave me some early mid-2000s mech vibes like the previous mentioned Fooly Cooly and also Eureka 7, a show that I definitely should talk about at some point because it's super underrated. Crazy thing is that in the same episode with the Pillows type tracks, I was bombarded with pounding bass rhythms and synths straight out of Cyberpunk 2077 or Blade Runner. Had me feeling like I was Ryan Gosling except way less handsome and way less rich and way shorter. And brown. Yeah, that's probably the biggest difference between me and Ryan Gosling. I think it's the brown thing. The variety of music choice for this soundtrack was a really nice touch for a show about killing giant monsters, and honestly fit the bill pretty damn well, so there's no complaints from me. I totally like this thing. Kaiju number 8 is most likely the best anime of the season, and potentially might just be the anime of the year. I don't watch seasonal anime much because I suffer from chronic brain rot and can't stomach things that don't feed into my crippling ADHD, but this caught my eye, and it truly kept my attention the entire time I was watching. I heard the manga kinda has fallen off over the years, but if the anime is done right, I could see this show taking over conventions and the internet for quite some time. My first impressions are pretty freaking strong, so I'm feeling a strong 8 here for Kaiju number 8. No pun intended. As always, this is your friendly neighborhood rom-com senpai signing off. Stay gold. Also, Kikaru is best girl, like 100%. I love tsunderes and pigtails. Hold on. You're telling me Konosuba Season 3 came out? Spice and Wolf got a remake? What the